Hi guys, Richard here. So a lot of my friends, especially the ones that know I'm doing this YouTube, have asked talk about some of your interesting experiences along your career path. And I thought I'd bring an interesting one up, a lot of hype around tech companies right now, especially the fan club, Facebook, Amazon, Apple, Netflix, and Google. And obviously there's a lot of hype because generally tech is just getting a lot of hype, right? And especially these bigger companies. And so I thought it'd be interesting to talk about why I personally rejected a marketing job at Amazon a year ago. So there's a lot of insights which I think might be interesting to you, especially if you're taking any job, what things you should probably look at just beyond the normal is my manager good or something like that, right? So just something to take into consideration. Just an FYI, I did have to sign an NDA, so there's certain things which I probably can't talk about. So hopefully I can talk about as much of my experiences and certain details which I think are a bit more public, which I can talk about. So yeah, hopefully this gives a bit of insight. So let's get into it. So the first reason is salary lowball. So I'm going to bring back branding as well. So the first thing that I noticed that was a bigger red flag was the 30% cut that I had to take. So they offered me 30% lower than what I was currently on at the time, and I went, okay, I'm going to negotiate that and try to get something at least a bit more, 15%. You try to get that as close as possible, right? Because that's what you want to do when you negotiate. But they wouldn't budge, and the reason they told me was, you're getting the brand, you're getting the Amazon brand, that is the reason. Although it didn't say that's the reason you're going to get a 30% cut, or we're not going to try to match it, but having just said those words to me was oh, that's a interesting red flag you got there going on. I mean, it's nothing. I'm not saying that it's bad. A lot of these tech companies do offer that, but to openly say it and then literally not try to negotiate at all, that to me was a big red flag. And I think this problem exists more for business roles over techie roles. I think techie roles have a bit more, I guess, better in a way. And so I think this was more of a business side role, a marketing job, obviously. And that to me is a red flag because, in a way, although the company should always value themselves first because obviously they need to put profit, if they don't value their employees and that's the reason they give you, imagine your next negotiation and they just use that to kind of say, hey, you know what, we're giving you a brand, right? So that to me was already a red flag, and that's my first red flag I'm going to talk about. The second red flag is RSU allocations. Now, RSUs stand for restricted, I think it's stock units. The S might be something else, but I think it's restricted stock units. I'll edit it if I'm wrong, but it's kind of what it's on the screen, right? Restricted stock units. And RSU is basically a stock, bunch of stocks they can give you, but they're restricted. Normally, RSUs follow a 1-year cliff and a 4-year vest. Now, that's in schedule. So normally, what this means is, let's say you're offered 20k stocks in total. That means to get your entire stock, 20k, you got to stay there 4 years, but 1-year cliff. So it means that you got to at least stay in a company for 1 year before you get your first bunch of stocks. Normally, it's a 25%, 25%, 25%, so on, vesting schedule. So you get a quarter each year. However, the first thing that Amazon told me when they told me my vesting schedule was this was the vesting schedule. It was, I think this is public information, by the way. So, and I asked one of my developer friends, and he actually got something similar to this. So I think it's pretty standard for Amazon. So, which equals in the end to 100%. So you can see here that making the comparison of 25-25, Amazon's trying to get you to stay there at least 3 to 4 years to get the majority of your stocks. So if you stay for only 2 years, you're only getting 20% of your stocks. Now imagine that. If you've got another awesome offer, you're locked into Amazon, right? You're literally locked into the agreement of you have to stay to 3 to 4 years to get that stock allocation. You're kind of crap, do I stay? Do I leave then? And to make it even better, let's just take this out. I'm going to tell you. So I got offered, so I'm not going to tell you the exact amount because I think that's, I'm not sure if that's allowed. But I got offered a bonus, 1 to 2 year, 1 and 2 year bonuses. Now, think about this. If they offered me a first year bonus of, let's say, I'm going to put a number up, it's not the exact number, let's say 10k, and the second year bonus is 20k. Now, when you get the money, it gets taxed, right? So if you leave before the first or second year, you have to pay that money back. And you're essentially locked in, right? So you are essentially if you leave in the first year, you're paying 10k back. And it's not like you get 10k, you get pretty much half of that or a bit more than that because of tax, right? So you're potentially paying out of pocket back to the company if you decide to leave. So RSU and bonuses literally are locking you into the company for at least 3 to 4 years. And a lot of tech companies do this, but I found Amazon a bit more interesting just because the majority of the stocks are vested in the 3rd and 4th year, whilst, for example, on a tech company I worked for previously, the vesting schedule was 25, 25, 25. So it's a bit fairer to the employees, right? So that to me was a big red flag. Just to add insult to injury, I've heard of stories where some of the like 5 to 10 year employees previously got kind of screwed by Amazon because they got, I guess the RSUs got reevaluated every year because Amazon is going too quickly. And so they're losing value on their stocks because Amazon's when, you know what, your stock allocation is too much, we're going to readjust it every year. That's insane, right? You're losing value of your stock, especially if Amazon's growing. You need to think about this. If they offer you stocks, the stock should always be a bonus. And if you're growing the company, you're helping grow the company, you should be rewarded, not like penalized for it. And that to me is a big, big red flag. So that's something to keep in mind. Now, the third one is high turnover. Now, yes, you might go, well, shouldn't every company have turnover? Yes, every company has turnover, but Amazon has incredibly some really high turnover for some of the companies out in the US, and especially the tech companies, right? And that to me is already a red flag. So if you look at like all the, like if you look at pay scale here, them saying that, you know, Amazon's number 2 on the least loyal employees, then that's pretty big red flag to me. And the other thing you need to keep into consideration is you need to go on Glassdoor and just check the negative reviews. Too many people check the positive reviews. You need to check the negative reviews and see why people are saying it's bad. If they're saying it's bad because there's not enough budget, well, if you're a growth hacker, it's okay because you're going to figure out stuff without budget. But if you're like, if you really want like a really good job and they say senior management sucks, they're super micromanaging and it feeds down to the rest of the organization, well, that's a big problem. And Amazon, like, it has all these high turnover stats, and you just need to keep in mind like the negatives as well. And that to me, I saw a lot of like some interesting facts. Like I think there's a lot of like heat around Jeff himself, and so to me overall that was like a big like, you know what, it's a bit shaky and a bit red flag. So keep that in mind as well. And the last point, which is real important for anyone, is there was no real progression, so career path. This is something you should always consider when you're taking any job. What's the career path look like, right? Am I here for the long run or am I here for the short run? If I'm here for the long run, especially with Amazon, because you're literally locked for at least 3 or 4 years if you get your RSUs and make sure you're not paying back bonuses back, you are locked in and you want to make sure you have a career path ready for those 3 or 4 years. And if you don't have one, big red flag. And when I was asking questions around this, I really didn't get much answers out of them. Like they said anything around like, oh yeah, we don't know yet, we're still growing the product. So at the time the product was expanding into Australia, so I was asking questions around how's the expansion in Asia looking like, is there opportunity there, especially for me to grow in that? And the answer was pretty much like, you know what, we're too early to tell, probably not, but you never know. That to me is already like a big red flag, especially the whole you never know but we're not sure, like especially the whole like, you know, oh yeah, if you work for us as an intern, you might get a full-time job. It's kind of like that kind of mentality, and so that to me was already like a big red flag. And so if there's no real career progression and you can't see it, is it worth the job for the brand? I'm gonna give you a bit of a no. That's what I think. So these are the 4 reasons why I didn't take the job at Amazon. To you, it might be different. Like maybe you want to be locked in for 3 to 4 years at like a company and get Amazon your brand. That's perfectly, as your resume as a brand. That's perfectly fine. I know people would do this, but if you're locked in, especially with Amazon for 3 or 4 years, like it's a bit of you're throwing like that amount of time that you could be growing in another tech company. That's my dog barking. So yeah, hopefully this helps you kind of determine if you want to take a role, especially at a big tech company, because a lot of the times they try to sell you the brand and you need to kind of consider the other factors, which just sometimes you don't think about, especially if you got a really good offer and you're like super excited. So yeah, hopefully this video helps. Leave a comment if you have any other questions or your own experiences around this. So yeah, thanks for tuning in and I'll see you in the next video.